My year of coaching college basketball. I was a community college math professor my entire career. My first math teaching job was at Southeast Community College in Cumberland, Kentucky. It was 1971. Segregation was waning, integration was on the rise. When I arrived on campus, I found out that no basketball coach had been hired that year. Just as suddenly, I was told the 3 new faculty recruits, me of course being one, would coach. So there was me, a math professor, Don Page, a philosophy professor, and Pete Smith, a student counselor. We were the furthest thing from a staff of coaches, mind you. We were alternating coaches. We alternated duties with practices and games. And because integration was just settling in, we actually had alternating teams. Some with primarily white players, some with primarily black players. To top it off, we had alternating coaching styles. Pete Smith was a redneck railroader who somehow, for some unknown reason, eked out a counseling degree. He talked down to his players and was overbearing and harsh. Ironically, any young person who came into contact with Counselor Pete would surely need to one day see a counselor. Just the opposite. Don Page was a hippie philosopher with a long black beard and had his head in the philosophical clouds. The players had a very hard time following his directions. He told the players to take it to the hole whenever they saw existential angst in their opponent's eyes, and to align our defense in accordance with the phenomenology of the other team's offense. Then there was me. I'd describe my coaching as a laid-back democratic style. I wasn't above adapting in accordance with player suggestions. Basically, I was open to any and all advice, especially if I thought it might help us win. The black players were more consistent in coming to practice and games, so the team became increasingly black. The heart of the team was Chucky, Amos, and Delmar. Chucky was a 5'8" point guard, Amos a leggy forward, and Delmar a handsome, muscular post player. All 3 of them were alert to the changes going on in society and in the area. They loved Sanford and Son, the only show on television featuring black actors. They loved being a part of Southeast Community College, yet they faced snarling racist remarks so often when coming anywhere near white society. Chucky was a practical joker, always clowning around, the life of the party. Delmar was a ladies' man among both black and white girls. Amos was both funny and proud. He deeply understood black pride and always let you know where he stood. The most exciting game I coached was the game against St. Catherine. St. Catherine was a long distance away and we had no money for lodging. Not surprised by that, I'm sure. My wife Patsy down here assisted me, and we jammed ourselves and 10 players into the school van to go to St. Catherine, which was 10th ranked among junior colleges in America. Our motley crew had afros and carried boom boxes. We full court pressed them the entire game, thanks to several coaching suggestions from the players. Chucky's jokes kept us loose. We were hot. Chucky was hitting from midcourt. Amos completed one of those slow-motion, long, leaping layups that looked just like Michael Jordan. It seemed like he took 1.5 steps to get from midcourt to the bucket. Delmar, meanwhile, was pulling down bushels of rebounds at both ends of the court. We kept close but could not defeat them on their home court. The final score, St. Catherine 104, Southeast 96. Back in the van, we made our way to Cumberland. Boom boxes back on as we meandered through those twisting Kentucky hills. At about midnight, the music was turned off and there was passionate conversation. In those years, black pride talk often had an element of revolution, about a future when they would take over. During our conversation, Amos said, "When we take over, Pete Smith is going to be the janitor." We all laughed. At about 2 a.m., we stopped for snacks, which apparently included beer, which honestly I was unaware of. By 3 a.m., I was so tired. I just wanted to get home, so I picked up the pace and drove faster through those dead Kentucky towns. When we arrived in our hometown of Cumberland, I eased through a stop sign instead of stopping completely around 4:30 a.m. Shortly after, I saw red flashing lights behind me and heard a siren. I was being pulled over with a busload of students. The players were hurriedly hiding the beers. They also understood that our van being full of black players had something to do with us catching the eye of Deputy Shotgun, famous for his ticketing record. I rolled the windows down. Deputy Shotgun said, "Son, you know what you did back there, don't you?" I said, "Yes, sir." Then he said, "Let me see your driver's license." So I handed it to him, confident it was valid. "What? I knew it was up for renewal this month, my birth month. I just didn't realize that it was this month last year." Somehow I had missed a year and let it lapse. I saw dollar signs, then turned red with embarrassment. I and the entire van were hauled off to jail. While I was being booked and fined, I made the good decision to ask Patsy to drive the players to their homes. Only problem was I forgot to ask her for the checkbook. So off she went, and I was left at their mercy. Then I was turned over to Deputy Shorty, who had a very small shirt and a very large tummy. He told me, "Hey, feller, I know where the sheriff keeps his petty cash. Let's me and you get into it and get us some." I knew better than to agree to that and badly wanted out of this unsavory situation. Finally, around 6:30 a.m., Patsy arrived back at the station. I wrote the check and she drove us home. I started to worry about word getting around campus about what had happened. The next morning, realizing I no longer had a valid license, Patsy had to drive me to work. I was so embarrassed, especially since she'd need to drive me to work every day for an entire month until my new license arrived. As Patsy and I pulled onto campus that first morning, I thought a strike or demonstration was taking place because a line of people had formed near the entrance. As we got closer, I realized it was my players lined up to greet me, a welcome party with a combined hoop and holler, teasing, "We love you, Coach." They continued to do this every day throughout the month. I'm sure you've guessed that we were not hired back to coach. They hired a real coach with a real experience. That was definitely a wonderfully rocky start to my career that I have never forgotten.